WrestleMania, and I'll just be damned if I'm going to be embarrassed.
WWE CEO Vince McMahon is now the focus of a federal investigation. NBC News reports McMahon is under criminal investigation as prosecutors try to determine if he broke federal law. There have been recent allegations of sex abuse and sex trafficking, and a former employee is suing
now
him.
Stepping forward, a lot of men saying that there's a good deal of gay sex abuse underway in the world of wrestling, and everybody all these years has been scared to step forward. Now come forward a number of people to say, because I wouldn't have sex with another guy in the game, I couldn't get promoted, including three, honestly, some well, listen, while you're laughing, this has been a not so funny issue for women. Now we have a casting couch, essentially, alleged in the wrestling game, and some guys are saying, I lost my job because I wouldn't do this to this guy who was a higher, more powerful than me on the ladder. And before you think this is trivial, first of all, let's understand that a couple of these charges involve kids, 14 years old, juveniles. You go to jail for a long time if you're involved with sex of any kind with a juvenile. One more point. The Wrestling Federation, you know how you tee-hee, ha-ha, what a joke, hoo-hoo, $1.7 billion in 1990. That's more revenue that has been generated by the NFL. So while you're laughing, somebody is whistling all the way to the bank. We have three people who used to be in the wrestling game who are going to tell you that they indeed encountered people who wanted sexual favors, and they were professionally penalized. Here is the head of that organization, who has accepted, incidentally, recently, resignations from two executives who stand accused of gay sexual harassment. He'll have a prepared statement. First, let's get the charges underway here. Gentlemen, Murray Hodgson, hired by Vince McMahon, here on my left for the TV job. You were the commentator. And then fired 2 months later. What happened? Can you specifically, and without taking us around the world, tell us, what is it that happened to you?
I wouldn't sleep with the vice president of operations, so they fired me.
Is the vice president of operations one of those who resigned?
Yes, he is.
And do you want to name him?
I don't think that'd be necessary.
What did you announce? Did you do any color for any telecasts?
Yes.
About how long did you do the color?
Oh, I started for about a month. They hired me for a 2-year deal, and it just went right out the window when I decided that I didn't want to sleep with the vice president.
Was there any touching? Was there any kind of vulgar locker room activity? We're trying to be specific here, Murray, as a court of law would oblige any person to be of any gender.
It was a little worse than that. He blatantly threatened my job security.
He didn't say sleep with me, did he? Is that the way men talk?
I don't think this is the proper forum to be
I agree with you, and I appreciate
details.
very much you're bringing a certain amount of decorum to this. This is a daytime television show, and we don't want to draw any dirty pictures. Did it happen more than once?
No.
Just once?
Yeah.
And then how long after you said no were you dismissed?
Just a couple of weeks.
Barry Orton. Here's Barry O, the former professional wrestler who you think you lost your job with the WWF after refusing similarly.
Actually, no, I've never actually said that. Okay, that's something that the media has come out, and with the stories that I've given, they have kind of turned it around to where I've said that. I've never said that. However, I had encounters with two of the gentlemen that have resigned since the allegations began. And these incidents, of course, happened in 1978, which is a long time ago. However, the impact and the gravity of the situations are very severe, And, you know, if they were behaving that way then, and, you know, they would be behaving that way now, I would expect.
No laugh here. You accuse an executive of grabbing your crotch, legs, and chest and wouldn't stop.
Yeah, well, I was in between the two of them in the back seat of a car on a trip.
You were in the center.
Right.
And you thought it to be a place where a junior guy has to sit.
Pretty much,
This would be early 80s?
This was 1978.
78.
Right.
So this is before the billion-dollar Wrestling Mania pay TV Hulk Hogan era. And you had to drive. You know, you guys weren't walking in money then.
Right. And everyone, you know, the more people in the car, the better, because everyone would split the expenses and keep their travel.
And then don't you saying that you got out of the car and said, not me? And
Oh, yeah. You know, went on for several minutes. I finally demanded that the car be... At first, I thought it was kind of funny that they were joking, but then it became, you know, harassment.
Right. Barry, it would be hard for a jury to feel a whole lot of sympathy for a guy of your size. You know what I mean? A helpless woman you're not. How old were you when this transpired?
19 years old. Probably about 35 pounds lighter.
And also probably not altogether together in your head, like a lot of 19-year-olds. I don't know.
Oh, absolutely not. You know, and I was trying to be accepted into the business.
Yeah.
I was young, I was green.
And you got the big dream ahead of you. Maybe you're going to be the big guy. And there was money if you got on the main card.
Made, yes.
Yeah. So you're following your dream, and I suppose you want us to know, among other things, that when a couple of guys in the game, executive types, come on to you like that, and you're 19 years old, you may be a little hesitant to tee them off.
Of course. You know, and so I endured it for as long as I could until it became, I started feeling suffocated or, and I couldn't take it anymore.
Tom Hankins, you're likewise a pro wrestler. What's your story, Tom?
Well, actually, I'm a former pro wrestler. I got out of the business about 4 years ago. But back in 1985 in Los Angeles, California, at the University Hilton Hotel, after the WWF had run a card at the sports arena, I was sitting at a bar with, I guess, can I name these people?
Sure, go ahead.
With Pat Patterson, Andre the Giant, Dr. Jerry Graham, and Mike LaBelle. He was the Los Angeles promoter at the time, or a former promoter in Los Angeles.
Right.
And we sat there drinking maybe for an hour or so. I was talking to Pat. I'd known Pat for maybe 6 months. I knew he was gay, but, it didn't matter to me if he was gay or not. And I knew he was actually kind of running the shows in L.A. at the time. I don't believe he was in position as the booker yet. And I asked him...
Let me interrupt to say that he is one of the executives who has resigned.
Right.
Very good, sir.
And I asked him what was the chance of using me to do jobs, which means I was a loser. I'm not real big. I never made a lot of money in the business. I didn't really expect to go in the WWF, make a lot of money. But
you wanted to be in the game?
Yeah, I loved the business. I worked for $10 a night sometimes in Tennessee, just to wrestle, just to be in the business.
Right.
At the time, in '85, I was wrestling in Hawaii, and Mexico, and Southern California. So I asked Pat for, if you give me a shot or at least a tryout. He said, well, you got 2 chances, slim and none. He goes, well, there is one way. And he wanted me to come up to the room with him and have oral sex with him. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, I'm not interested. And after that, I went to the next show they had at the sports arena. Went down to the dressing room where they'd always let me, I was in the dressing room, friends with a lot of the other wrestlers there. And Pat had me physically thrown out after that, acted like he didn't know me.
Right. What brings you forward now, gentlemen?
Actually, I came forward because when Vince said Barry's charges were ridiculous, it was just, I knew it was something that went on in the business, and anybody in this business really knew about it, knew what was going on with Patterson.
Mm-hmm. So this is like this is a feature of this culture that has been underway for a long time. And because it often involves near jobless, vulnerable young males who wanted to be either in the game or on the card, they'd back up and nobody wanted to blow any whistles. And I think, if I may, this also should be said, you didn't get a lot of press scrutiny. Nobody took you seriously anyway. Mainstream sports press today doesn't. And Mushnick of the New York Post writes a piece, Phil Mushnick of the New York Post, his lead last week, the billion-dollar pro wrestling empire is about to be shaken to its foundation.
Sexual harassment exists in your workplace?
I believe that there's a possibility of sexual harassment existing everywhere. And
I asked directly if it was in the World Wrestling Federation.
And I don't want it in my organization. I don't want it.
I'd like to reiterate the question. Do you believe there is sexual harassment amongst the wrestlers or employees at the World Wrestling Federation today?
There is a possibility of that. That's why I have these independent investigators to come in investigators.
And who are these independent investigators?
Fairfax Group Limited. And I would like, to hear what you have to say, and everyone has to say. I want to get to the bottom of it.
Would you therefore believe that because of all these allegations coming forward and more corroborating evidence proving that there's no doubt sexual harassment is running rampant in the World Wrestling Federation, that you are definitely going to come public and do something about it?
Why wouldn't I? If in fact that is the case, why wouldn't I do something about it? Why would I risk what we have?
Because you haven't done anything about it until it became public, because you thought it was under the water.
Because I had no knowledge of it.
I made knowledge of it to you when I was fired, and you just blew it off and let me go. I retained a lawyer.
Because you were not very good. You were not a very good announcer. You could not. That's the only reason why you were fired. You could not make the transition from radio to television. That is the only reason why you were fired.
I would like to remind you, sir, that I have a 2-year contract. 2 years.
You also have a clause in your contract that states, and as you know, you were hired on a trial basis.
I was not hired on a trial basis.
You do not have a contract?
Mr. McMahon, I have a 2-year deal with your firm.
In that contract, you will note, in a clause, it states very clearly, and I have it outlined for all to see here today, that you can be fired almost at whim if, in fact, you're not doing a good job. You did a horrible job. That's the only reason why you were fired. That's it.
Maybe I should point out, first and foremost, that might be your inability to pick good talent.
It could be.
You had a national talent search, Vince McMahon.
It could be.
You advertised in Billboard magazine and across many different media sources searching for one man that could be the new face and voice of the World Wrestling Federation. You flew me in back and forth 4 and 5 different times from Detroit, and you chose over the course of 1 year of negotiations that I would be the man for that job. I didn't sleep with your vice president. 2 weeks later, I'm fired. I also want to point out one very important fact. From your office came a letter to my landlord to verify my employment. From that letter, I must bring this point up. It says Murray Hodson has a very secure job with Titan Sports and is a positive and productive employee. From your office. Just because I don't sleep with your vice president, that qualifies to blow me out of a 2-year deal? I don't buy it.
Right. Well,
Superstar Billy Graham, I'll tell you what, he's won his share. Former pro wrestling champs. Hey, baby. Oh, they still love you, Billy. Don't tell them I had to give you a shot before the show, right in the mouth, because you were disobeying my orders. Former, hey, what's not so funny, Billy? Tell them. You saw ring boys, did you, being sexually harassed?
Yes, I've seen ring boys being sexually harassed.
What's a ring boy?
A ring boy is a person who's usually employed to put up and take down a ring, travel from one town to another. Age group possibly from 13 to 19 to 20, fluctuates anywhere in between.
And you saw what?
I saw on one occasion, in I believe it was New Haven, Connecticut, Pat Patterson actually grabbed one of these children in the crotch while putting up the ring. I came to the ring a little bit early, walking by the ring to the locker room, and I saw Pat Patterson with his left arm on the kid's shoulder and his right hand in his crotch. I witnessed this for myself.
You also claim to have, you did not see the abuse of a 12-year-old boy in the car. You mentioned this on Larry King's program.
I wasn't on Larry King's program.
Weren't you? I'm sorry, Barry, I'm sorry. Sorry, you weren't. Bruno was. We'll get to Bruno in a moment. Did you see, you didn't see the abuse of a 12-year-old in a car by the ring announcer, did you?
I didn't see the actual abuse. I was there the night in Allentown, Pennsylvania, when Mel Phillips was caught in the front seat of a car with a child approximately 10 years old performing oral sexual on this child of 10 years old, brought into the arena by a security guard, confronted to Mr. McMahon, Vince Sr. and Vince Jr., and they said we would handle it.
Vince Sr., your father? Is that right, Vince?
yes, and first of all...
Is that true?
No, I don't know if it's true or not. I can tell you that no one ever came to my dad.
What was the
or
year
to
this
me.
is supposed to have taken place, Billy?
About 82 or 83, I can't remember, but the main part I want to bring...
We should also make this point, Billy. These are pretty heavy bombs you're throwing
These
here.
are very heavy bombs,
but we don't have any proof, and I don't think you're claiming to have seen the illegal act.
Okay, I may not have seen this particular illegal act, but it has gone on for so many years. Just as the selling of drugs by Dr. George Zahorian has gone on for 15 years in the World Wrestling Federation, witnessed and condoned by Vince McMahon, you see, and condoned by him sitting this close to Dr. Zahorian while he sold steroids, while he sold barbiturates, downers and uppers to every wrestler who have wanted them. You see, I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is the man could condone this, so he also condoned the homosexuality. He put up with the drug selling, and he put up with the homosexuality.
Identify the cast of characters here. You mentioned Mal Phillips. He is another of the executives who has resigned.
I don't believe he was an actual executive. He was a ring announcer.
Was he not? Has he not resigned from the WWF?
I believe he has resigned or been fired. I don't know which.
Is he not one of the people who has...
He's one of those who has
stepped down,
alleged, yes.
Following the publicity about this.
Why didn't you speak up when you allowed Dr. George Zahorian to sell barbiturates that almost killed Rick McGraw? They were in his bloodstream when he died, along with all the...
Billy, we're all smarter now about steroids.
But wait a minute. Barbiturates, steroids, plus hardcore drugs that I had 3 overdoses with myself from Dr. Zahorian's drugs. And I tell you one thing, if my wife would have had a gun, she flushed half the drugs down the toilet. And if my wife sitting right there would have had a gun, she would have killed Dr. Zahorian. And she said if she would have had a chance, she would have killed Vince McMahon because he permitted it to happen.
Yeah, but you took him too, didn't you?
I was addicted because of the accessibility.
Yeah, well, you must have been a real crank when you were on him too, weren't you? I mean, weren't you? I mean, doesn't it affect your personality? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
You're addicted. You're addicted.
But you're also crabby and easy to anger, aren't you? Doesn't it alter behavior and emotional? And
not if you're sedated. Not if you have barbiturates and you have Pasadil.
Could you compete and survive and be a top card person in the 80s in the wrestling game without taking steroids? Be honest.
No, not you would have to take steroids to in Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Federation to be on top.
Because it made you bigger, you look better in the post. Sam Martino, you did appear on the Larry King live program last week. Are you impressed with Mr. McMahon's apparent acknowledgement here on this program, which was not forthcoming on that one, that maybe there is a problem?
Some of these poor folks out there are sitting there listening to these guys, and when he makes them, they even applaud. Poor people, you don't know this man. Let me explain something to you. I wrestled from 1959 to 81, and I retired. When I came back in 84 as a color commentator, believe you me, the world of wrestling that I left and the one that I found, it was bizarre. I mean, it was filled with drugs of all kinds. We're talking about steroids, but there was cocaine. In fact, this man who pretends like he wasn't aware, why didn't somebody come to me? One time I had to go to Arizona, to New Mexico, different place, because one of his druggies was out of it, and I took his place, even though I really didn't care to at that stage of my life because I had retired. I specifically said to the man, hey, if I'm going to be going to these places in the arena, says I want to make sure that I don't drive with any of you wrestlers that are full of coke and whatever. So he arranged for this other old-time wrestler, Jay Strongbow, for me to travel with him because I wouldn't be in a car because I was always afraid of a car being stopped full of drugs. And he said to me, don't worry, he says, I'll get the agent to rent the car so you can go around with him.
Well, let me just say this in behalf of Mr. McMahon. First of all these charges are yet to be proven.
They're just coming up.
And I want to get to this, Bruno. Well, that's another thing. Why are they just now coming up? Let's understand this.
I can answer that question.
What is it?
There's never been a forum for them before. You have to understand that the wrestling business has always been a totally closed entity. It's almost like an elementary school. You don't snitch. You don't tell. If something happens in the business, there was a friend of mine, okay, and it has nothing to do with Vince McMahon. I don't want anyone to think it does, who was murdered in a dressing room. And it was very difficult. This was in Puerto Rico. And it was very difficult for the wrestlers, even in the murder, to go to the police the next day and tell the truth. It took one of the guys who was a friend of the guys, says, we've got to go tell the truth. And there was so much pressure on telling that, that you don't snitch.
Last night on my radio program, I had 2 midget wrestlers on. And
we don't see them anymore, do we?
No, we don't. We don't see them anymore.
Tell them why.
Last night on my show, a midget wrestler by the name of Karate Kid alleged that in a dressing room, Pat Patterson made some sexual advances towards him. The leader of the midget group, Lord Littlebrook, went to Pat... No, it sounds bizarre, and it is bizarre, but it's sad.
Make the story, please. Running out of time.
Yes, okay. Lord Littlebrook went to Pat Patterson and said, leave this kid alone. He's not gay. He scared the little guy, to tears. They were not used, but one time after that sexual advance was...
Denied.
They were only used one more time, and the midgets
Right.
have not been used since then.
Vince McMahon. Here is the owner of the World Wrestling Federation.